What happens aback, a simple weather segment, turns into one of the most explosive television moments of the year when Donald Trump agreed to arise on Today for what was declared to be a lighthearted babble about his favorite seasons and altitude predictions. Nobody expected the babble would spiral into an acrimonious battle that would have the above admiral walking off set. The restriction started subtle, almost imperceptible, but oral minutes, it became bright that something unprecedented was advance alive on morning television. Before we get into what absolutely went down, accomplish abiding, you hit that subscribe button and beat a comment below. Cogent me what you anticipate about this accomplished situation. Trust me, you're going to appetite to break until the end because what happens in the final moments is absolutely shocking. The morning started like any added at Rockefeller Plaza. Al Roker, the beloved weatherman who has been a basal of morning television for decades, was preparing for what his producers had built as a fun, accidental segment. Trump had been authoritative the circuit on various shows, and the Today aggregation anticipation they could abduction some of that signature Trump personality in a airy setting. The plan was simple. Allocution about the weather, maybe get some thoughts on climate patterns, bandy in a few jokes, and blanket it up with some pleasantries. It should except been easy. It should have been forgettable. Instead, it became the talk of the complete nation. Aback, Trump walked to assimilate the set that morning. He seemed to be in acceptable spirits. He shook hands with the crew, coiled to the audience aggregate alfresco the studio windows, and exchanged a few words with Savannah Guthrie for authoritative his way to the acclimate centermost area Roker was waiting. The two men greeted anniversary other with smiles, the affectionate of professional warmth that comes artlessly aback cameras are rolling. Roker, anytime the professional, started with what seemed like a softball question. So, Mr. President, I perceive you've got some strong opinions about a lot of things. What's your booty on this unseasonably balmy fall we've been having? Trump leaned back slightly, that familiar, confident posture demography over. Well, Al, I'll tell you, the weather's been beautiful. Really beautiful. Bodies are cogent me all the time. They say, have you seen how nice it's been? And I say, yes, I have, because I pay absorption to these things. A lot of bodies don't pay attention, but I do. Roker nodded, maintaining his smile. Acceptance there was a beam of article in his eyes. Maybe he sensed what was coming, or maybe he was aloof actuality cautious. He followed up with addition question, still keeping things light. But, you know, Mr. President, a lot of meteorologists are saying this Amori is absolutely allotment of a larger arrangement we're seeing with climate change. What are your thoughts on that? The about-face in Trump's address was subtle but noticeable. His smile remained, but it anchored aloof a fraction. Climate change, he said, cartoon out the words. You know, Al, I've heard a lot about climate change. A lot. And I've talked to a lot of absolute acute bodies about it. Some of the smartest bodies you'll ever meet, and they acquaint me, they say, it's not as simple as some body's appetite to make it seem. Roker's eyebrows raised slightly. Well, the science is pretty clear on this one. I mean, I've been doing acclimate for over 40 years, and I can acquaint you immediate that we're seeing patterns that are unprecedented. The data backs it up. Trump's Duke came up, that appropriate activity he makes when he's about to accomplish a point. The data. Okay, the data. But whose abstracts are we talking about? Because I've seen data too, Al. I've apparent lots of data. And not all abstracts says the aforementioned thing. You've got some scientists adage one thing, added scientists adage something completely different. So, aback you say the science is clear, I accept to ask which science. The temperature in the studio seemed to rise, acceptance not from any acclimate pattern. Roker maintained his composure, but his articulation took on a slightly firmer edge. Well, with respect, Mr. President, 99% of climate scientists accede that animal activity is contributing to all-around warming. That's not absolutely an agitation in the scientific community anymore. 99%, Trump repeated, a slight smile arena at his lips. You know, I apprehend that cardinal befuddled about a lot. 99%. It's the abundant number. Very impressive. But I admiration who counted who went and asked every distinct climate scientist in the apple because I know some altitude scientists, absolutely smart people, and they don't all exceed with that. Roker confused his weight, and you could see him authoritative at best in real time. He could let it go, beacon the conversation aback to safer territory, or he could engage. Actuality, the seasoned journalist he is, he chose to engage, but diplomatically. I anticipate what's important actuality is that we're seeing complete effects. Stronger hurricanes, added acute califaction waves, changing precipitation patterns. These aren't opinions. These are observations. Trump's acknowledgement came quick. And we've always had hurricanes, Al. We've always had califaction waves. I bethink califaction waves when I was a kid. Big, admirable heat waves. Nobody alleged it altitude change back then. They alleged it summer. There was a ripple of amusement from some of the crew, but Roker wasn't laughing. But the abundance and acuteness are increasing, he pressed. I've covered these storms for decades. I've apparent the changes myself, and I account that, Trump said. Acceptance's accent suggested otherwise. I account your experience, but you're a weatherman, Al. An absolute good weatherman. One of the best? Everybody knows that. But admiration the weather and compassionate all-around climate systems, those are two absolute different things, wouldn't you say? The slight was subtle abundant that it could accept been brushed off as a misunderstanding, but everyone in the flat acquainted it. Roker's jaw anchored imperceptibly. Actually, meteorology and climatology are carefully accompanying fields. I anticipate I have the appealing, acceptable, compassionate of both. I'm abiding you do, Trump replied. But there was a bend now, a sharpness that hadn't been there before. I'm sure you accept a lot. But you apperceive what I understand? I accept that climate has been alteration for millions of years. Millions. Continued for humans, long before cars, continued afore any of this. The Earth goes through cycles. It's natural. Roker leaned advanced slightly. Yes, accustomed altitude change occurs, but what we're seeing now is accident at a rate that far exceeds any accustomed cycle. The automated revolution, the burning of deposit fuels, deforestation. These are factors that are accelerating change beyond what would activity naturally. Trump waved his duke dismissively. Fossil fuels congenital this country. Al congenital the whole avant-garde world. Activity independence, economic growth, jobs, all of that comes from energy. And now somebody's appetite to shut it all bottomward based on predictions that may or may not be accurate. Models that accept been amiss before. By the way, how abounding times accept these altitude models been wrong. The babble was no longer a affable chat. It had become a debate, and both men seemed to realize they were too far in to back out gracefully. Roker's articulation remained steady, but there was animate in it. Now models are aesthetic over time as we gather added data. That's how science works. But the basal trend is unmistakable. The planet is abating, and human activity is the primary driver. Primary driver, Trump echoed. You sound very assertive about that. Absolute certain. But I bethink not to continue to go, people were afraid about all-around cooling. Remember that. In the 70s, anybody was saying we were branch into an ice age. Now it's warming. So which is it, Al? Are we freezing, or are we a fire up? Those were basal studies that were later refined. Roker countered. The scientific accord now is based on decades of research, bags of studies, and cutting evidence. This isn't the amount of opinion. Everything's the amount of assessment until you can prove it above any doubt. Trump attempted back. And I haven't seen that proof. What I've apparent is a lot of people blame an agenda and calendar that would aching American workers, hurt American businesses, and accomplish us dependent on. Added countries for energy. That's what I see. The articulation was supposed to accept lasted 5 minutes. They were now blame 12, and the producers were aimlessly aggravating to amount out how to blanket things up afterwards, causing a bigger scene. But both Trump and Roker seemed bound in, neither accommodating to concede ground. So, your adage all the scientists are wrong? Roker asked, his articulation assent slightly. All the data, all the research, all the evidence we're seeing with our own eyes, that's all aloof allotment of some agenda. I'm saying follow the money, Al, Trump replied. Whose allotment all this research? Who benefits from blame altitude change? There's a lot of money circuitous in this. Billions and billions of dollars. Solar companies, wind companies, electric car companies. They're all authoritative of fortune off this. And who's blamed the narrative? The aforementioned bodies who benefit from it. You don't acquisition that suspicious? What I acquisition suspicious, Roker said, his patience acutely cutting thin, is ignoring absoluteness because it's inconvenient. We accept satellites, we have arena stations, we accept ocean buoys, we accept ice cores, we accept tree rings, all cogent us the aforementioned story. At what point does the affirmation become enough? Aback it's definitive, Trump said firmly. Aback it's not based on models and predictions, but on facts. Hard facts. The facts are appropriate and advanced of you, Roker said. His articulation now accustomed an unmistakable bend of frustration. The Arctic ice is melting at almanac rates. Sea levels are rising. Coral reefs are dying. These aren't predictions. These are things accident appropriate now, today, as we speak. Trump leaned forward, matching Roker's intensity. And the Arctic ice has broiled a 4 AL. It's broiled and refrozen abounding times throughout history. The Earth goes through balmy periods and cold periods. This is basal stuff. The Vikings acclimatized Greenland aback. It was actually green. Did they accept SUVs back then? Did they accept atramentous plants? No, they didn't, but the altitude changed anyway. Roker befuddled his head, a gesture that seemed to say he couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're cherry-picking absolute examples and ignoring the complete abstracts we have now. The amount of change is what matters. We're seeing temperature increases that would commonly booty bags of years happening in decades. Or maybe Trump countered, your abstracts is flawed. Maybe your instruments aren't as authentic as you anticipate they are. Maybe there are factors you're not accounting for. The sun, agitable activity, ocean currents. There are so abounding variables. And you're telling me that you can definitively say it's all because of animal activity. That seems appealing arrogant if you ask me. The chat aloof afraid in the air like a challenge. Roker's eyes narrowed slightly, and aback he spoke. His words were abstinent and deliberate. What's arrogant is absolution, the assignment of thousands of scientists because it doesn't fit your narrative. What's arrogant is cerebration you apperceive better than bodies who accept committed their entire lives to belief this. And what's naive, Trump accursed back, is believing aggregate you're told without questioning it. I catechism things, Al. That's what leaders do. They don't just accept the accepted wisdom. They dig deeper. They ask boxy questions, and when I ask questions about climate change, I don't get beeline answers. I get attacked. I get alleged a denier. Well, I'm not abstinent anything. I'm just not convinced. Assertive of what? Roker pressed. What would it booty to convince you? What affirmation would be sufficient? Because it seems like no amount what data is presented, no amount what we observe. You've already fabricated up your mind to adios it. I fabricated up my mind, Trump said, his articulation rising slightly, to assure American interests, to assure American workers. To accomplish abiding, we don't abort our economy, block afterwards some theoretical crisis that may or may not be as bad as people say, you appetite to allocution about a real crisis. Let's allocution about people losing their jobs. Let's allocution about energy prices activity through the roof. Let's allocution about authoritative America dependent on China for solar panels and batteries. That's a complete crisis, Al. So, it's about economics for you, Roker said, added as a count than a question. You're accommodating to accident the planet's approaching for concise economic gain. Risked the planet, Trump repeated, almost incredulous. You see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The planet has been actuality for billions of years. It's been through ice ages. It's been through abating periods. It's been through asteroid impacts. And it's still here. The planet's activity to be fine, Al. What we charge to anguish about is people. Real bodies with complete jobs and real families. And I'm not activity to sacrifice their livelihoods for some doomsday scenario that keeps not happening. Keeps not happening. Roker's articulation went up a notch. We're seeing record-breaking temperatures about every year now. We're seeing adverse wildfires, devastating floods, unprecedented droughts. How is that not happening? Weather events, Trump said dismissively. Bad acclimate happens. It's always happened. You appearance me a bonfire today, I'll appearance you a bonfire from 50 years ago. You appearance me a flood, I'll appearance you a worse flood from 100 years ago. This idea that every bad storm or hot summer is affidavit of altitude change, that's just not scientific. But the arrangement and frequency, Roker insisted, his hands gesturing for emphasis. It's not about individual events. It's about the overall trend. And that trend is clear and alarming to you. Maybe Trump said to you and to bodies who appetite to believe it. But to a lot of added people, including some absolute acute scientists, it's not so clear. And until it is, until there's complete proof, I'm not going to abutment behavior that hurt America. Roker took a breath, seemingly trying to compose himself. You know, I've interviewed a lot of bodies over the years, politicians, celebrities, experts of all kinds, and I've always tried to accumulate an accessible apperception to see different perspectives. But aback, someone ignores cutting scientific consensus, aback they accent politics over facts. That's not accepting a different perspective. That's being willfully ignorant. The flat went quiet. The aggregation associates glanced at each other, borderline of what would appear next. Trump's face had gone from activated to stone cold. He stared at Roker for a long moment, and aback he spoke. His voice was low and controlled. "Did you just alarm me ignorant?" "I said willfully ignorant," Roker clarified, not abetment down. "There's a difference. You accept admission to all the information. You accept to avoid it." Trump's jaw clenched. "You apperceive what, Al? I came here as a courtesy. I came actuality to have a nice conversation, allocution about the weather, be friendly, and instead you ambush me with this altitude change propaganda, and afresh you insult me on live television. Is that what today has become? Is that what NBC is about now? This isn't an ambush," Roker protested. "You brought up your angle on climate, and I responded with facts. If you feel insulted by facts, that's not my problem." "Facts," Trump said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Your facts. The facts that you believe, but they're not the alone facts out there. Al, and you sitting actuality in your adequate studio with your adequate job, cogent me that I'm apprenticed because I don't agree with you. That's appealing rich. My comfortable job involves tracking hurricanes, advertisement on natural disasters, and watching communities get destroyed. I've stood in the accident of Katrina, Sandy, Harvey, Maria. I've seen what these storms do to people, and they're accepting worse. So don't acquaint me about comfort. And I've rebuilt communities," Trump countered. "I've created jobs. I've congenital buildings. I've helped economies grow. I apperceive what it takes to accomplish things assignment in the real world, not aloof in some bookish theory or computer model. The complete world, Al, that's area I operate. The complete world is changing," Roker said firmly. "And if we don't act, it's activity to change in ways that will accomplish all your buildings and all your jobs extraneous because you can't do business on a planet that's becoming uninhabitable." "Uninhabitable," Trump laughed. But there was no amusement in it. "Now you're talking about the planet becoming uninhabitable. This is exactly the affectionate of exaggeration I'm talking about. The fear-mongering, the end of the Apple predictions. I've been hearing this my accomplished life. In the 70s, it was the advancing ice age. In the 80s, it was acid rain. In the 90s, it was the ozone layer. In the 2000s, it was global warming. Now it's altitude change. It's always something. And somehow, we're always appropriate on the border of catastrophe, but it never absolutely happens. Those were all complete problems that we addressed," Roker explained, his patience clearly at its limit. "We anchored the ozone layer by banning assertive chemicals. We reduced acerbic rain through environmental regulations. Those problems got better because we took action. That's the whole point. Or maybe Trump-appropriate they weren't as bad as bodies claimed in the first place. Maybe the predictions were wrong. Maybe the models were flawed. And maybe, aloof maybe, the aforementioned affair is happening now with altitude change." Overblown predictions based on incomplete abstracts pushed by bodies with an agenda. The calendar is extenuate of the planet, Roker said, his articulation ascent again. The agenda is authoritative, abiding our accouchement and grandchildren accept a adequate world. What's your agenda, Mr. President? What's your alibi for inaction, my excuse? Trump's articulation akin Roker's volume now. I don't charge an alibi for not affairs into hysteria. I don't need an alibi for putting American workers first. I don't charge an alibi for questioning narratives that don't add up. And I absolutely don't charge to justify myself to you, Al, on your little acclimate segment. Little weather segment, Roker repeated, and there was hurt alloyed with acrimony in his articulation now. I've been accomplishing this for over 40 years. I've becoming the account of my colleagues and the public. And this little weather segment alcove, millions of bodies every single day. And that's great, Trump said, acceptance his accent appropriate. It was anything but. That's absolutely abundant for you, Al. You've had an admirable career, but accepting a continued career doesn't make you appropriate about everything. And it certainly doesn't accord you the appropriate to lecture me on a live television and call me ignorant. I alleged your position willfully ignorant. Roker clarified again, and I angle by that. When you have admission to all the scientific evidence and you accept to adios it for political reasons, what abroad would you call it? Trump stood up abruptly, a sudden movement communicable anybody off guard. You apperceive what I alarm it? I call it accepting the adventuresomeness to anticipate for myself. Article you acutely don't understand. You aloof echo whatever the approved anecdotal is. Whatever your handlers acquaint you to say, and you think that makes you informed. It doesn't. It makes you a puppet. The insult landed hard, and Roker stood up as well, facing Trump beyond the acclimate center. A puppet. I've appear from war zones, from accustomed disasters, from some of the most alarming places on Earth. Then maybe you should act like a journalist instead of an activist. Trump shot back, his feel pointing at Roker. Maybe you should address the account instead of aggravating to accomplish it. Because that's what this is, Al. You brought me on here to accomplish a scene, to try to abash me, to get your viral moment. Well, congratulations. You got it. I brought you on actuality to accept a conversation, Roker said, his articulation affrayed slightly with affect now. A babble about something that matters. Article that affects every actuality on this planet. And instead of agreeable honestly, you've turned it into a political bazaar like you consistently do. Like I consistently do. Trump's eyes widened. You're the one who started attacking me. You're the one who called me ignorant. You're the one who couldn't just accept a affable babble about the acclimate afterwards axis it into an interrogation. This is your show, Al. This is your network. This is your circus. Because some things are too important to aloof smile about. Roker insisted. When addition with your platform spreads misinformation about climate change, aback you influence millions of bodies to avoid a crisis. That's not article I can aloof nod along with. That's not article I can be affable about. Misinformation, Trump said, afraid his head. There's that chat again. Anyone who disagrees with the official anecdotal is spreading misinformation. Anyone who asks questions is a cabal theorist. Anyone who thinks abnormally is dangerous. That's the apple you appetite to live in, Al. Area anybody has to think the aforementioned way, accept the aforementioned things, or abroad they're the enemy. That's not what I'm adage at all, Roker protested. I'm adage that aback the affirmation is overwhelming, aback the science is settled, aback the experts agree. We should listen. That's not conformity. That's wisdom. The science is never settled. Trump countered. Real scientists apperceive that. Complete scientists question, they test. They challenge assumptions. They don't aloof abatement in line because anybody abroad is. And the fact that you anticipate the science is settled on article as circuitous as global altitude tells me you don't really understand science at all. Roker's face flushed. Don't address me about understanding science. I've formed with climatologists, meteorologists, oceanographers, atmospheric scientists. I've apprehend the studies. I've looked at the data. Except you, Or do you just listen to whatever your political advisors acquaint you will comedy able-bodied with your base? My base, Trump said with a bitter laugh, cares about accepting jobs. The affliction about agriculture their families. The affliction about befitting the lights on and the calefaction running. They don't care about abstract temperature increases 50 years from now. The affliction about real problems today now. And you standing here acting like they're brainless for caring about their absolute lives instead of your altitude models. That's elitism. Al, that's absolutely why bodies don't trust the media anymore. This isn't about elitism, Roker said, his voice strained. This is about reality. And the reality is that altitude change is going to affect those aforementioned bodies you affirmation to care about. It's activity to affect their jobs, their homes, their children's futures. You can't aloof avoid it because it's inconvenient. I'm not blank anything, Trump said firmly. I'm prioritizing. I'm making sure that whatever we do about the climate doesn't abort people's lives in the process. I'm authoritative abiding. We don't hand over our abridgment to China while we chase afterwards wind and solar ability that can't alike accumulate the lights on during a cold winter. I'm actuality responsible, Al. Something you wouldn't understand because you don't accept to accomplish the tough decisions. Boxy decisions. Roker's voice absurd slightly. The tough decision is acceptance aback you're wrong. The boxy accommodation is alteration course when the affirmation tells you to. The tough accommodation is putting the future ahead of concise political gain. But you won't do that, will you? Because that would beggarly acceptance you don't have all the answers. I never said I accept all the answers, Trump replied. But his voice had taken on an altered quality now, colder and added controlled. But I know abundant to admit aback I'm being sold something. And that's what climate change is, Al. It's a product. It's being awash to you, to the public, to everyone, by bodies who account from you buying it. And I'm not buying. It's not a product. It's science, Roker said, almost pleading. Now, why can't you see that? Why can't you aloof attending at the evidence with an accessible mind? Because I've seen too abounding alleged experts be wrong, Trump said. I've apparent too many predictions abort to appear true. I've seen too abounding bodies use abhorrence to manipulate others, and I'm not activity to abatement for it. I'm not activity to let America fall for it. So, you can sit actuality and judge me all you want, Al. You can alarm me ignorant. You can alarm me whatever you want, but I'm done with this conversation. Trump angry to leave, but Roker's articulation chock-full him. You're just going to airing abroad aloof like that. When the babble gets difficult, when someone challenges you with facts, you just leave. Trump angry back, his face a affectation of controlled anger. No, Al, I'm leaving because this chock-full actuality a conversation a continued time ago. This became a trap, an ambush, and I don't play those games. You appetite to accept a real altercation. About altitude policy, about energy, about what's absolutely best for America, I'm blessed to do that, but not like this. Not with addition, who's already absentively I'm the villain afore I even airing through the door. I didn't decide anything, Roker said, his voice quieter now, but no beneath intense. I responded to what you said. I challenged your statements with facts. If that feels like an ambuscade to you, maybe you should appraise why facts feel threatening. Trump stared at him for a long moment, and for aloof a second, it seemed like he ability sit back down, might abide the conversation. But then he befuddled his arch slowly. You really accept that, don't you? You really anticipate you're on the ancillary of the angels here? That you're angry the good fight? That anyone who disagrees with you is angry or brainless or both? That's sad, Al. That's absolutely sad because you acclimated to be bigger than this. And you acclimated to be a businessman, Roker replied, not accommodating to let Trump have the aftermost word. Addition, who dealt with reality, with numbers, with actual facts. Now you're aloof a politician, saying whatever keeps your supporters happy. Accuracy be damned. Truth? Trump said about Bedlam again. You appetite to talk about truth? The accuracy is that you've been admiration adversity for years, and it keeps not happening. The truth is that bodies are annoyed of being told they're abhorrent for absent a good life. The accuracy is that your climate crusade has become an adoration, and anyone who doesn't adoration at your chantry is a heretic. That's the truth, Al. The truth, Roker said, his duke spreading wide in the activity of annoyance, is that we're active out of time. The accuracy is that every year we adjournment makes the problem worse. The accuracy is that future generations are activity to attending aback at people like you and ask why you didn't act aback you had the chance. That's the truth. Approaching generations, Trump said, will acknowledge bodies like me for not destroying the abridgment over a maybe, for not sacrificing their present for someone else's eyes of the future, for standing up to the mob and cerebration for myself. History will be the adjudicator, Al, not you. You're right, Roker said quietly, and there was article almost resigned in his articulation now. History will be the adjudicator, and I anticipate we both know what that acumen will be. Trump studied Roker's face for a moment, and something flickered beyond his own expression. Article that ability have been disappointment or perhaps recognition of a arch austere beyond repair. You apperceive what the saddest part of this accomplished affair is? We could have had a acceptable conversation. We could have found some accepted ground, but you couldn't advise yourself. You had to go there. You had to accomplish it personal. You had to be appropriate added than you capital to be effective. I am right, Roker said simply. And sometimes actuality appropriate is more important than actuality affable about it. A fresh adore actuality right, Trump said, his accent final. Now adore it all by yourself. Because this is the aftermost time I'm accomplishing annihilation with you or this network. You fabricated your choice, Al. Now you get to alive with it. As Trump moved to leave again, Roker alleged out one more time. That's what you do, isn't it? When anyone stands up to you, when anyone refuses to go forth with your version of reality, you cut them off. You erring away. You acknowledge achievement and leave. That's not strength, Mr. President. That's cowardice. The words stopped Trump in his tracks. He turned slowly, and aback he spoke. His articulation was ice cold. Abhorrence is ambuscade behind consensus. Abhorrence is actuality too afraid to anticipate for yourself. Abhorrence is attacking addition. Aback you perceive they can't absolutely action aback because you're on your home accommodation with your friendly audience. You appetite to alarm me a coward, Al. Attending in the mirror first. I attending in the mirror every day, Roker said, meeting Trump's boring afterwards, flinching, and I can alive with what I see because I know I'm angry for article that matters. Can you say the same? What do you think? Did Roker go too far by calling Trump's position willfully ignorant? Or was he appropriate to challenge those angles so directly? Bead your thoughts in the comments beneath and make sure you subscribe because moments like this don't appear about generally and you don't appetite to absence the abutting one.